Have you ever noticed that there are days when the idea of seeing people, even people you genuinely care about, feels like something your body simply cannot do? Not because anything went wrong, not because you are angry or unwell, just because something in you has given out all it had, quietly, over the course of a long day, and the only thing left in you now is the one thing almost no one gives themselves permission to want, to stop. You closed the door about an hour ago, and you are still just sitting there, not crying, not upset about anything you can name, just carrying the particular weight of a day that asked you to be present for everyone except yourself. There were conversations you held, expressions you kept in place, a face you wore that knew exactly what each room required of it and produced it without being asked. And now the door is closed and no one is watching. You should feel relieved. But next to the relief, there is something else. A message you have not answered. An invitation arriving through the phone right now. Another gathering. Another evening that seems to belong to everyone but you. And before you can stop it, the feeling comes. Not tonight. Not even a full thought. Just a quiet closing. And then, almost immediately, the one that follows it like a shadow follows a body. What is wrong with you? Everyone else seems to be out there, moving, connecting, keeping pace. And here you are, wanting nothing more than to let the world continue without you for a few hours. You have told yourself it is tiredness, a phase, something that will settle when the pressure eases. But it keeps returning. And each time it returns, it is a little quieter, a little more certain. Carl Jung spent 4 decades studying what happens inside a human being when they turn away from the world and move toward something interior. And what he found was not avoidance, not weakness, not a sign of something broken. He found the beginning of something most people spend their entire lives moving too fast to ever reach. This video will not tell you to stay home. It will not give you a plan. What it will do is walk slowly beside you into the question you have already been living with. What is the part of you that keeps choosing this? And what has it been trying for a very long time to protect? Something has quietly shifted in the way we understand a human life. The person who is always available has become, without anyone quite deciding this, the model of a life working correctly. The unanswered message carries a faint accusation. The protected evening requires justification. And the one who pulls back, who goes quiet, who starts choosing the interior over the exterior, is looked at with that particular expression that does not need words. Are you all right? Somewhere in the accumulation of small moments, a belief settled in. That the person who needs less noise is lacking something the louder people have. That choosing stillness is a symptom of something not quite right. Jung spent his life disagreeing with this, not loudly, not with argument, with observation. He watched, over 40 years of clinical work and his own inner life, what actually happens when a human being finally goes still enough to hear themselves. And what he saw was not a person falling behind. He saw a person beginning. Beginning, often for the first time, the essential work of becoming who they actually are. He called it individuation, but you might recognize it by a simpler feeling. The persistent, quiet sense that the life you have been living has not yet been fully yours. This video will not fix anything. It will not resolve the tension between the face you have been wearing and the one that exists underneath it. That resolution, if it comes slowly, in the small hours, in the rooms where no one is watching, What this video will offer is something that may be more useful than a solution. A language. A way of understanding what is moving in you when you pull back, when you grow quiet, when something older and more specific than tiredness calls you to close the door and remain inside for a while. Jung believed this call is never without meaning. The psyche, he argued, is always moving toward wholeness. The withdrawals, the silences, the mornings when you cannot bring yourself to resume the face required of you, these are not signs of disorder. They are the inner life doing its work, and learning to recognize that work, to name it and honor it rather than push past it. That may be one of the most important things a person can do in the middle of a life. Let us begin. Chapter 1. The mask that forgets it is a mask. Think about what happens the moment you walk into a room full of people. Something assembles itself. Not through decision, not by choice. It simply happens. A certain posture, a particular tone, a face that knows exactly what level of warmth this room requires and produces it, without being asked, without hesitation. You become the version of yourself this room needs, and you are genuinely good at it. Good enough that the people around you rarely see the effort, because the effort has become invisible even to you. You have done it so many times that the face and the person wearing it have grown difficult to separate. By the time you get home, there is an exhaustion that does not have a clean name. It is not the tiredness of physical work. It is something closer to the specific depletion of having been, all day long, not quite yourself. Jung called this the persona. The word comes from the Latin for the mask worn by actors in ancient theater to project a character to an audience. He used it to describe the psychological layer every human being develops in order to function within the collective. The outward-facing layer. He was careful to say that the persona is not a lie. It is necessary. Without some capacity for social adaptation, life in community is not possible. The problem, Jung argued, arises not from having a persona, but from losing the boundary between where it ends and where the actual self begins. He wrote that the persona is what one is not, but what oneself and others think one is. A person who has no space where the mask can come off, who has no private ground where nothing is required of them, begins to disappear into their own role. They continue to function. They continue to appear on all available evidence entirely fine. But something interior grows steadily quieter, less accessible, further from themselves. Think of an actor who has inhabited the same role for 15 years without a single night off, who has played it so completely and so continuously that they begin, in the small hours, to find it difficult to remember what their own voice sounds like when it is not projecting toward an audience. Consider a woman named Claire. 39. She works in a field that requires her to be warm, present, and decisive for other people all day long. She is celebrated for it. Her friends call her first. Her family leans on her without quite realizing they are leaning. For years, Claire believed this was simply who she was. Then, one autumn, she began canceling plans. Quietly, one at a time. A dinner she could not bring herself to attend. A phone call she let ring through. A weekend she kept for no one, with no explanation she could adequately give, even to herself. What she described was not sadness, not depression. It was more like a tiredness beneath tiredness, as though something inside her had used up its entire reserve and was simply sitting still, waiting for permission to stop. What Claire was feeling was the persona signaling it had been worn without rest for too long. And in the silence that arrived when she finally stopped, a question surfaced that the continuous wearing of the mask had, all this time, been preventing. When no one is watching, when there is no role to inhabit, who is actually here? Jung believed this question is where the most important work of adult life begins, not in the first half of life, which is rightly given to building and achieving, but in the second half. When the structures built in the first begin to feel like a house that was made for someone slightly different from the person now living in it. Staying home, for people like Claire, is not avoidance. It is the first honest encounter with what has been living behind the face. And that encounter always begins in the same place. In the part of ourselves we have never quite been willing to look at directly. The part that did not disappear just because we stopped looking. It went somewhere. And when the door finally closes and the quiet arrives, it begins slowly to surface. Chapter 2. What surfaces in the silence? Here is what surprises people the first time they spend real time alone. The quiet is not peaceful, not at first. In the first hours, sometimes the first days, of genuine stillness, something uncomfortable begins to move. Thoughts with no clear source, feelings that arrive without names, a restlessness that cannot be settled by making tea or moving around the room or reaching for the phone. Most people assume this means they were right to stay busy, that the stillness is a mistake. Jung had a different understanding entirely. He called what surfaces in the quiet the shadow. The shadow is not the worst of you. It is not a collection of dark impulses. It is, more precisely, everything that was pushed out of the conscious self in order to be acceptable, to the family, to the workplace, to the version of yourself you decided you were allowed to be. Fear of being too much, anger that was never given a name. Grief set aside because there was no space for it. The longing for something you convinced yourself was not meant for you. The parts that were too raw, too inconvenient, too uncertain to carry into the life you were building. The shadow does not form because a person is broken. It forms because a person learned to adapt. And the tools of adaptation, the busy schedules, the social obligations, the constant management of how we appear, function perfectly well as a curtain. We do not see what is behind it because we are always in front of it. But the moment we stop, the moment the pace slows and the curtain settles, what was behind it has been waiting there the entire time. Jung wrote, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." A man named Thomas discovered this at 42 during an unexpected sabbatical. He had imagined the time as restorative. He would read, travel, finally sleep well. Instead, he woke before 5 every morning with a low, persistent discomfort he could not locate. Nothing external had caused it. His life was intact, and yet something felt profoundly unresolved. What emerged over weeks was not a new problem. It was something much older. A grief he had never allowed himself to feel over a version of himself he had quietly abandoned in his 20s in order to build the life that was expected of him. A creative impulse, extinguished gradually over years of practicality. An anger at the life he had built, which was exactly the life everyone agreed was correct, but which had slowly stopped feeling like his. The shadow had not created these feelings. They had existed all along. What the stillness had done was remove the layer that had kept them invisible. Jung was not interested in eliminating the shadow. He was interested in making it conscious, because a shadow that is seen and named loses its power to operate undetected. It shifts from an invisible director to a known part of the whole self. Confronting the shadow is not self-blame. It is an act of acknowledgement that a human being is complete, that it contains both light and shadow, and that only by accepting the shadow can the inner fragmentation cease. He believed that this is not comfortable work, but he also believed it is not as dangerous as the not looking. Think of it this way. There is a room you have never entered because the light did not reach it, and you have been hearing things from inside it your whole life and assumed those sounds meant something to be afraid of. But when you finally stand in the doorway, when you let your eyes adjust to what is actually there, the shapes inside are not what you feared. They are parts of yourself that had nowhere else to go. The anger that was too inconvenient to hold. The grief that was too slow for the pace of life around it. The longing that seemed too uncertain to act on. The version of you that was simply too much for the rooms you were permitted to occupy. They have been there the whole time, not disappearing, not diminishing, waiting. Staying home, in the stillness that eventually arrives when the distraction runs out, is often the first time a person stands in that doorway. The shadow becomes powerful not when it is seen, but when it is denied. What is not made conscious continues to operate from behind, shaping choices we believe are rational, fueling reactions we cannot explain, drawing us toward certain people and away from others in patterns we recognize, if we recognize them at all, only much later. The room has always been there. The question is only whether you have ever been still enough to enter it. Before we go further, I want to pause here for a moment. If what you just heard touched something in you, if you recognized the room at the end of the corridor, or the weight that surfaces when the busyness finally stops, or the part of yourself that went underground so long ago you almost forgot it was there, I want you to know that you are not alone in that recognition. You never were. If you feel comfortable, leave one word in the comments below. Just one word for whatever this section stirred. It does not need to explain anything. It is simply a way of being witnessed, quietly, by others who know exactly what it feels like to stand at that doorway. Let us keep going. Chapter 3. Temenos. The sacred ground. You already own. There is a concept Jung borrowed from ancient Greece that almost no one discusses when they talk about solitude. He called it Temenos. In its original meaning, a temenos was a piece of land set apart, marked off, protected from ordinary use, dedicated to something that required conditions the everyday world could not provide. A sanctuary where the normal rules of exchange and demand did not apply. Jung brought this into the language of psychology to describe something he considered essential to the deepest work of the inner life. A protected interior space, a container. The psychological equivalent of ground that has been deliberately marked off and kept clear. He believed that without a temenos, genuine transformation cannot occur. Not because transformation is dramatic or rare, but because it is, by nature, slow, fragile in its earliest stages, easily broken by demands that arrive before what is emerging has had time to form. The deep work of becoming yourself needs a container, a place where what is not yet finished doesn't have to justify itself, where what is fragile isn't required to be strong before it is ready. Your home, chosen with that quality of intention, is exactly this. Not just four walls, not just a place to exist, a temenos, the one space where the world cannot enter unless you permit it. The one ground where you are not managing a role, or meeting an expectation, or adjusting the face for a room. And from that protected ground, something becomes available that the noise had been, all this time, preventing. A woman named Elena, 45, had spent 2 decades building what appeared from the outside to be everything she had worked for. And yet for a year, she had felt a persistent sense of something unfinished. Not unhappiness. More like the sensation of having set something important down somewhere and being unable to remember where. She tried reasoning through it, discussing it. None of it reached the place the feeling was coming from. Then one winter, she began protecting her Sunday mornings entirely. No phone, no obligations, just herself, the light, and whatever arose. At first, only restlessness arose. Then, gradually, something different began to surface. Not from thinking, a quality of knowing, a sense of what was true for her, as distinct from what was expected of her, that she had not been able to access in the noise of her regular life. What Elena had created, without having the word for it, was a Temenos, a container that was hers alone, a space no external demand could enter. And inside it, the process that had been waiting began, very slowly, to move. Jung observed that in ancient cultures, the creation of sacred space was never accidental. It was a deliberate act, an announcement that within these boundaries, something different is being tended. When you choose to stay home, when you close the door without apology, when you protect that time from the slow encroachment of availability, you are performing this ancient act. You are marking off the ground. You are saying, within these walls, I am not a role. I am not available. I am simply whatever I actually am. And from that ground, everything else that follows becomes possible. Chapter 4. Synchronicity. When you grow still, the right things find you. Something begins to happen when a person genuinely slows down. It is subtle enough that most people moving at full speed miss it entirely. Things begin to arrive that cannot be accounted for by ordinary logic. A name surfaces in the mind, someone they have not thought of in months, and 2 hours later that person sends a message. A book falls open to a page that answers a question they had not quite finished forming. A feeling arrives, not a thought, but a felt sense, about a direction that has resisted months of reasoning, and in the quiet of one still afternoon, it simply becomes clear. Jung called this synchronicity. He defined it as a meaningful coincidence, a moment when an inner state and an outer event meet with a significance that cannot be traced to cause and effect. He was precise about this. He was not speaking of magic. He was describing something he had observed consistently enough in clinical work that he could not dismiss it. The unconscious is always processing more than consciousness can contain. It holds patterns, connections, and information that the rational mind, occupied with its immediate concerns, does not have the bandwidth to perceive. And those patterns can only be received when the person is quiet enough. A woman named Sarah spent several years as the person everyone leaned on. She was reliable, warm, endlessly available. And she had been trying, for months, to understand something that kept evading her. Why she felt so hollow in a relationship she had every reason to value. She had analyzed it from every direction, spoken to friends, made lists, nothing resolved. Then, during a weekend when she finally let herself stay home and be unreachable, 3 separate things happened that each touched the same point. A conversation she remembered from 3 years ago, a line in something she was reading, and a feeling in her body, quiet but unmistakable, that said, "This is not it." No new information had arrived. But something that had been known, without being conscious, finally rose above the noise. Jung would say the unconscious had been holding this all along. What changed was not the knowledge. What changed was the stillness that finally allowed it to be received. Think of it as a frequency that has always been broadcasting, not from outside you, from the deeper layers of yourself. The part of the psyche that holds more than conscious awareness can manage. The part that sees the pattern before the reasoning mind has assembled it. The part that knows before the knowing can be put into words. This signal is continuous. It does not pause when we are busy. It does not wait for a convenient moment. But hearing it requires a particular condition. A receiver that is not overwhelmed by its own noise. When life is full of obligations and constant availability and the social management of how we appear, the signal is present but not audible. Not because it is weak, because the interference is too high. When a person genuinely slows down, when they protect the quiet, when they choose, without apology, to stay in the space that belongs to them, the interference settles, and what was always being transmitted begins, finally, to come through. Jung wrote that synchronicity is an ever-present reality for those who have eyes to see. Those eyes, it turns out, require stillness to open fully. And in that stillness, another layer of intelligence becomes available. One that speaks not through analysis or logic, but through the one channel most people keep unintentionally closed even when they are at rest. The language of dreams. Chapter 5. What the night is trying to tell you. There is a kind of communication that does not require you to be awake for it. It arrives in the hours when the face you wear all day is entirely suspended, when no role is being inhabited, when the giving and managing and adjusting has finally, completely stopped. Sleep. And in sleep, something speaks. Jung believed that the dream is the psyche's most direct language, not the language of logic or social explanation, the language of image, symbol, and felt sense. The way the unconscious delivers what consciousness has not yet integrated. He wrote that the dream is the small hidden door in the deepest and most intimate sanctum of the soul. Most people, in the rhythm of a life organized entirely around others, receive this communication the way you might receive a letter you never have time to open. The dream arrives. It registers briefly at the edge of waking. And then the next demand begins, and the letter slides under everything else, unread. But something changes when the pace slows, when mornings are given more room, when the first minutes of waking are not immediately filled with the resumption of responsibilities. When the night has been quieter and sleep has been deeper, and the threshold between sleeping and being needed has finally, for a little while, been given some space. The dreams shift, or more precisely, the relationship to them shifts. They become more available, more coherent, more clearly connected to what is actually moving in the interior life. A woman named Maya had not paid much attention to her dreams in years. She would have described them, if asked, as noise, random fragments, nothing to take seriously. Then came a period when the relentless pace of her life, organized almost entirely around her children, her aging mother, and a job that required constant emotional presence, finally gave way. A few weeks where the structure loosened, where mornings had a few minutes of actual quiet before anyone needed anything. The dreams arrived almost immediately. Not nightmares, not dramatic, more like scenes from a life she recognized as hers, but more spacious than the one she was living. In the most persistent of them, she was in her own house, but it had rooms she had never opened. Each one, when she entered it, contained something she recognized as belonging to her, things she had owned but set aside, parts of herself she had put into storage when there was no longer room for them in the life being demanded of her. Jung would read this as information, the unconscious communicating through image what it could not communicate through reason. He believed that every meaningful dream is an attempt by the psyche to compensate for what the waking life has left unaddressed. Not to punish, not to confuse, to restore. Who looks outside dreams, he wrote. Who looks inside awakes. The dreams are not noise. They are what the interior life has been trying to say during all the hours you were too occupied to listen. And they are available in the slower mornings, in the evenings that have not been entirely given away, in the life that has been allowed, even briefly, to belong to the inside rather than the outside. Choosing to stay home creates those hours. And in those hours, the part of you that cannot speak in daylight finds its way through. Chapter 6. Reclaiming the energy that has been scattered. There is a particular kind of depletion that doesn't come from doing too much. It comes from being too many things for too many people, for too long, without a place that asks nothing in return. Jung described psychological energy with the word libido. He used it in a broader sense than the word usually carries. For Jung, libido was the animating life force itself, the energy that moves through all of a person's psychological activity. And like any energy, it depletes. Not all at once, gradually, steadily, in the way a lamp slowly dims when it is left on without being replenished. Every role carried requires a portion of that energy, every relationship maintained, every expectation met, every face adjusted for a room. All of it draws from the same source, and when that source is never allowed to replenish, when every quiet moment is filled with another availability, another need, another person who depends on the version of you that is always ready, the person at the center of it all begins to hollow out. They may still be functioning, still arriving, still doing all the required things, but something essential has gone quiet inside them. The energy is going out, and nothing is coming back in. Jung observed that when this imbalance continues long enough, a person becomes increasingly dependent on external conditions to feel anything at all. Dependent on being needed to feel valuable. Dependent on the responses of others to feel real. He warned that every form of addiction, whether to substances or to roles, to constant approval or to endless availability, is a sign of energy that has lost its way home. A man who had been the person his world leaned on for years described a moment that clarified something he had not been able to name. He was the one called first, the one who listened longest, the one whose steadiness everyone around him depended on without fully realizing they were depending on it. One evening, depleted in a way he could not articulate, he sent a message to the people closest to him. A simple one. He said he was exhausted and needed someone to listen for a few minutes. The message sat in the conversation for 10 minutes. Then the thread resumed around another topic entirely, as though his words had not appeared. He sat looking at the screen for a long time. And what arrived in that stillness was not anger, not self-pity. It was clarity. He understood in that moment something he had been too busy to see. That in the economy of these relationships, his energy went out and nothing came back. He had become a vessel through which others' lives passed and were processed, and what was being consumed was not just his time or his attention, it was the interior life itself. This is not selfishness to recognize. It is the beginning of something Jung considered essential, the act of reclaiming what has been scattered, not withdrawing from relationships, not ending generosity, but recognizing that genuine presence, real presence, the kind that actually gives rather than depletes, requires a self that has enough interior resource to share. You cannot give from empty hands, and the hands become full again only in the spaces where nothing is required of them. Choosing to stay home, protecting those hours, letting what has gone outward slowly find its way back. This is the condition that makes everything else possible. Chapter 7. The Long Journey Toward the Self. Jung once said that the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. It is a sentence that lands differently at different ages. In your 20s, it can feel like encouragement. In your 30s, a reminder. But somewhere in the middle years, when the structures built in the first half of life have become solid and have perhaps begun to feel like a house that was made for someone slightly different from the person now living inside it, it begins to sound like an invitation, and perhaps also like a gentle warning. Individuation was Jung's word for the process of becoming oneself, not a better self, not a more successful or more admired self. The actual self, the one beneath the face, beyond the shadow, underneath the roles and expectations, and the carefully maintained version of life that other people recognize as you. He was clear that this process doesn't happen on a schedule. It doesn't happen all at once. It doesn't happen through decision or effort or a particular program. It happens in the spaces between the scheduled life, in the evenings that were not filled, in the mornings that were given room, in the seasons when the pace slowed enough that the interior life could finally be heard above the exterior noise. Consider a woman named Rachel, 47. She described her adult life as living by momentum, not consciously choosing the direction so much as being carried forward by the next logical step, the next expectation, the next version of what a person in her position was understood to do. She had moved through it efficiently, competently, and with a growing sense, quiet but persistent, that the person doing all of this was not quite the same person she had started as. One evening, after everyone had left and the house was empty, Rachel sat in a chair she almost never used, in a corner of a room she rarely noticed, and did not move for a very long time. She was not meditating, not processing anything deliberately, simply there. And in that unscheduled hour, something surfaced that she had not allowed herself to feel in years. Not a crisis, more like a quiet recognition that there was a version of her life she had never quite inhabited. Not a different life, necessarily. The same life, but lived from a different place. From the inside out rather than the outside in. From what was actually true rather than from what was expected to be true. She could not have arrived at this in a room full of people. The recognition needed the specific conditions of that evening: the empty house, the unfamiliar chair, the absence of any demand at all. It needed the Temenos, the time of silence, the shadow given space, the dreams taken seriously, the energy returned. All of it pointed here. Jung believed that individuation is not a destination, it is a direction, not a place you arrive at, but a way of moving through life, increasingly, slowly, imperfectly, toward what is actually true in you rather than what has been assumed to be true about you. And the people who take this direction, he observed, are not those who sought it out deliberately. They are the ones who one day stopped moving fast enough to avoid the question, who sat, unexpectedly, with themselves, and discovered that there was more inside them than the occupied self had been given room to express. The pull toward home, the need for evenings that belong to no one. These are not symptoms of withdrawal from life. They are the inner life insisting on its own depth. They are the process announcing that something is ready to begin. Not louder, not more visible, just more true. We began with a moment you recognized. The closed door. The unanswered message. The feeling that arrived like a quiet, clear knowing. Not tonight. And then the other voice. The familiar one. The one that has been with you so long you barely hear it, as separate from yourself anymore. What is wrong with you? We have walked a long distance since then. We named the face that forgets it is a face. We stood at the doorway of the room where the shadow waits, and found that what is inside is not what we feared. We understood that home, chosen deliberately, becomes a Temenos, ground that has been set apart, where the work that cannot happen in noise finally has the conditions it needs. We became quiet enough to receive what the interior has been trying to communicate. We listened to the language that arrives in the slower hours. We traced where the energy has been going and began, perhaps for the first time, to let some of it come home. And we arrived at the deepest understanding of all, that the journey toward yourself doesn't happen out there. It happens here, in the room where no one is watching, in the hour that belongs to no one except you. Jung wrote near the end of his long life, "Your vision will become clear only when you can look into your own heart, not outward, not toward what the world reflects back at you, inward, toward what lives beneath the reflection. There is a version of you that doesn't need the world's permission to exist, a version that doesn't require an audience or an explanation, or someone to witness it in order to be real. It has been patient. Very quiet, waiting with a steadiness that perhaps surprises even you, now that you are still enough to notice it. That version is not behind you. It is not something to be recovered or rebuilt or earned. It is simply what is left when the face comes off. The choosing to stay home, on the days when that choice comes from something real and quiet in you, is not a retreat from life. It is the beginning of a different kind of living. One that starts as all real things start, not in noise, but in the protected, unhurried space of a life that has been allowed, at least in its quietest moments, to turn inward. And perhaps that has always been enough. Perhaps that has always been more than enough. To stop, to return, to sit in the room that belongs to you, and to discover that what you have been looking for has been here the entire time, in the place you stopped looking. If this video found you at a moment when you needed it, perhaps that was not entirely by accident. Subscribe to Where You Begin, and we will continue walking inward together. Because everything you are looking for starts where you stopped looking. And it has always been here, waiting for you to stop long enough to arrive.